You're listening to the Get FireSmart Podcast. Here we learn from FireSmart leaders to discover how we can increase the wildfire resilience of our homes, neighborhoods, and communities. Today's episode is guest hosted by Dan Stevens, FireSmart Education and Outreach Coordinator for the First Nations Emergency Services Society of British Columbia. And now, it's time to get FireSmart.
My name is Dan Stevens. I work for the First Nations Emergency Services Society of British Columbia. I'm located out of Chase, BC, which is on the traditional unceded territory of the Secwepemc people. So a part that a lot of people don't know about me is outside of my FireSmart work, I'm also a municipal councillor. I've been so for about a year and a half. And, I really see the other side of FireSmart. So grateful to be here today. David, can you please share a few things about yourself?
Sure, absolutely. My name is David McIlwraith. I'm the SCRD FireSmart Coordinator, and the SCRD FireSmart program is situated on the unceded traditional territories of both the Shishal Nation and the Squamish Nation. And myself, I also serve as a volunteer firefighter with Roberts Creek Fire Department.
Wow, that's fantastic. Well, we've got a fantastic guest here, and I'm really looking forward to diving in a little deeper into the question, what makes a FireSmart community? So I really couldn't have had a better guest on the podcast as my very first guest as I co-host. But I really want to know today, David, what pulled you towards FireSmart and wildfire resiliency?
Interesting. Thanks, Dan. So I started out with the fire department about 15 years ago. And in 2018, we were deployed to Burns Lake and worked on the south side there. And it struck me. It really instilled something in me. We saw a lot of the FireSmart principles going on. And it was the first time ever that I'd seen, the ember casts and things like that. And you were seeing embers that were as big as your fist and so on. So it was a couple of aha moments for me. And there was one scene where there were some homes that had actually been protected with sprinklers, but they had failed. And what had happened was a tree had burned down and fallen across the supply line for the sprinkler systems. So that always sat with me, and looking at it from a FireSmart lens, which I didn't really realize was a FireSmart lens at the time. But about 2 years later, in 2020, I was given the opportunity to take the face-to-face course that they had in North Vancouver. And that's really what got me into it. So since 2020, I've been doing it on a voluntary basis. And then just recently, we started with our new program. We're only in year 2 of our SCRD FireSmart program. So we're still pretty young, but we're getting lots done.
Wow, that's an incredible story, and I really appreciate you sharing that journey. So in your experience then, what truly defines a FireSmart community? You talk about people putting up sprinklers on their homes, but then trees falling into those homes and causing ignition, bypassing the effectiveness of a sprinkler system. So I guess going back to the question, what defines a FireSmart community? What makes you think, wow, that community really has it, or wow, that neighborhood really has it?
There's two things, I think. Number one is there's the physical appearance of the neighborhood where you can see that they're actually actively doing work. But I think as important, if not more important, is the attitude of the people that are there. And that's where I really see it. So even before I get on scene or on site to talk to these people about their neighborhood, if that enthusiasm is there, if that engagement is there, and there's a little bit of knowledge that comes along with it, that to me says this is a community that gets what's going on here.
Wow, that's really good perspective. So, we have successes, but we also have challenges. So in those times when, you're working through the neighborhood and you've got the buy-in, what do you say to those in neighborhoods or in communities rather, that are struggling with the neighborhood buy-in or struggling with the community buy-in?
Persistence, I think, is the number one thing. And what we find in a lot of times is that, and I do have a couple of communities that haven't bought in completely. There's lots of talk. The challenge, I think, for a lot of those people is that there is a small group of individuals that get it, and the larger number of the people may well get it, but they're not willing to do the work. So it's kind of a little bit of a baby step. And with those ones, what we do, the approach is don't tell them what to do, but show them what to do. And so we'll go in and we'll do some field trips of some of the people and show them this is what it looks like. And usually that gets some people on board and they get engaged and they see what you're doing. Because I think the thing that really scares people, and I've heard this time and time again, was they're going to come in, FireSmart's coming in, I'm going to have to cut down all my trees. This is it. And that's the attitude, and it's not the attitude. So when you show them just the small amount of things they need to do, even just baby steps, and from our perspective, with my team's perspective, is it's not a pass-fail, it's a journey. And the more we all go on this journey and take these small steps together, the more the entire community will become that much more resilient.
That's a great perspective. We talk about the FireSmart journey a lot, and we talk about the differences in everybody's FireSmart journey. We often talk about big change, often starting small. So was there a team, was there a club, was there an individual that you worked with, that really supported the FireSmart program in your regional district and really started to drive kicking off FireSmart initiatives?
Well, Dan, I could probably mention a bunch of them. So again, our program is very young. So we're in our second year of our program. So in the first year, we were able to get one community recognized. This past year, we got 12 more, plus the initial one renewed. Now that initial community is called Brigade Bay. It's on Gambier Island. And what's very interesting, the biggest buy-in that I've been seeing is through communities that are outside of the fire protection districts. And because they know I'm a structural firefighter, they always want to engage in suppression and what kind of material should we be getting and so on and so forth. But with the Brigade Bay team, what they've done is they've already got their suppression system in place. And they've got, this is a small community that has 225,000 gallons of standing water ready for fire suppression at any time.
Wow.
They've got 8 sheds that has 24 pumps. They've got just everything you can imagine. And twice a year, they do hand-on demonstrations for every single homeowner. And there's 60 units in there. Their thought was, we need to take it one step further. And the one thing that I always say, how do you stop a fire? Well, the easiest way to stop a fire is to never have the fire to begin with. And that's where they're at. So of the 60 units, I think we've actually done assessments on about 48, 49 of them now over the course of a year. So they're there and they're driven. So they have a team their committee is very engaged with the entire community. There's a fair amount of retirees, so they do have a little bit of extra time on their hands, but they are driven every single day.
That's incredible. You've led a lot of different FireSmart efforts, through the short time that you've been the FireSmart coordinator in your regional district. What leadership lessons have really stuck with you when it comes to building wildfire resilience in communities?
I think the leading aspect is lead with intent, let people know what you want to do, and don't take on an attitude of don't do as I say, do as I do. And that's what I really try to do. So even when we're doing fuel treatments, I'm in there with everybody working hands-on. We don't use power tools, we use hand tools. So it's very physical work, but we're all in there working together side by side with the communities and with the neighbors doing this work together. That's probably the single biggest thing that I'd say.
In your time that you've been at this FireSmart work, seeing the work up close, the wins, the challenges, from your perspective, David, are people more open to FireSmart ideas today than they were a few years ago?
Oh, 100%. 100%. And what we're finding is that we're getting a lot of requests to come out and speak to service groups, church groups, university groups, so climate action groups. I've got 2 sessions coming up this next weekend, and I jokingly say that we're very opportunistic feeders, and we will go wherever people are, and if they'll give us the opportunity to jump on our soapbox and talk to them, we will. But everybody seems to be very, very aware of it. And it's not too long a time before I'm having another conversation with someone else. It always seems to be on everybody's lips. And candidly, we've got a lot of really good press in our local newspaper as well, which has been great.
That's awesome. I was wondering, can you elaborate a little bit on how maybe the Sunshine Coast Regional District uses social media and the press to promote some of the successes and wins and some of the FireSmart BC programming?
So one of the things that we'll do, my entire team does, if anything comes out from FNESS or from BC Wildfire or from FireSmart, we pick it up ourselves. But there is an SCRD social media communications director, and he gives us lots of opportunity to send stuff out. So we're sending stuff out on a regular basis, and we have very good relationships with the local press. So I will have an opportunity. We just did one recently for one of our first communities that were recognized this year was a community called Witherby Estates, again, outside of the Fire Protection District. And we were able to get the newspaper there with our electoral official there, was there as well with it. So a great photo op and a great news story for everybody. So we're trying to do that as much as we can. We haven't really delved too much individually on it because, again, we are a regional district, so there are confines on how we can go ahead with social media. So everything gets funneled through our communications director.
Fantastic. And bringing us back to, what really defines a FireSmart community, are you running any current programs like the rebate program or a specific program that's driving the initiative for the Sunshine Coast Regional District?
We haven't done anything with the rebate program yet. And again, second year in, it wasn't budgeted for, and we thought some of our funding could be better spent on a structured protection unit, things like that. But where we're really getting some inroads is in the home ignition zone assessments. Last year we did about 562, and we've got a relatively small group of individuals. But some of the stuff and some of the metrics we see as well, we created a FireSmart website within our SCRD website that channels everybody back through to the FireSmart BC website. And I can tell you that we're on average getting about 2,000 hits every quarter on that just from our local residents.
That's really impressive.
So it's nice to be able to see that and feel it. And we've kind of tailored it. We've taken all the information that's there is from FireSmart BC, but we've kind of put it to where it's the most relevant information for our community and for our residents.
Right on. Well, I really appreciate that insight. And, when I think back to some of the FireSmart BC programming, I think now to resilient communities involving youth. Is the Sunshine Coast Regional District involving youth in any way? And do you have any situations or stories that you'd be able to share with the listeners today?
So we do have, for some of our crew members are actually high schoolers. So we have 2 casual crew members that are high schoolers. But we took a little bit of a program, and I don't know if you were thinking about this when you're asking me that question. We do have a program that we've created for the Girl Guides. Is that what you're...
That's exactly where I was going.
Okay. So interesting story with that one because they had wanted me to come out and talk to them about being more fire prepared, their words. And what I did, I went out and met with their president of Camp Olathe on the Sunshine Coast. And we chatted a bit, and I said, what I'd really like to do is I'd like to do a community wildfire risk assessment of your 100 acres. So we did that. And then I said, and then what I'd like to do is I'd like to take each of the 25 structures that they have and do an individual assessment of each of those structures. So they could really see what their values were and what some of the issues were. A lot of common issues throughout all of these, obviously. And then I was asked to present to their AGM the assessment. So I did a FireSmart awareness thing with an assessment piece in it. And when we talk about the zones, I actually used their zones in general to speak about some of the things that were going on. Now, on a sidebar, it was on the old format, which was very much a numerical value. And that scared the hell out of people because they saw the numbers. And when you took the pass-fail rating, everything was at high risk. So we were able to talk our way through that. And then at the very end of that presentation, I launched an idea at them. And I had actually worked with one of our suppliers to create an embroidered patch. And what it was, this would give the Girl Guides an opportunity to earn a FireSmart badge for them. So they mulled it over for a little bit, and I'm happy to say that they actually came back, and we ran a program for them last summer. And we were able to run, I think, about 350, 400 guides, different age groups through the program, and they all earned their patch. So they all went home with the 24-hour checklist, with all the literature that was available through there, with a letter from us describing what it was they had done and what their child had performed, and then the patch. And the interesting thing when we did this was we did it in smaller sections, so groups of 20, and they have some areas in there where there's like these little sleeping cabins. And we had them, there was one area where there were 7 little sleeping cabins, basically a bunkie. And we split them up into 7 different groups. And they then went from what we taught them, they then went and did their own assessment of each of those bunkies and then came back. And as a group, we discussed everything that was going on and what needed to be done and the remediation and so on and so forth. So it was kind of fun.
That's amazing. And, through my work and through that story, what I can hear is, The youth involvement is so important. And what I've found is that youth and kids are sponges for information. And not only are they sponges, but they love to share. And, often they'll talk to their parents or guardians about the importance of wildfire resilience. David, you mentioned having 2 high school students participate in mitigation. Can you explain to our listeners a little bit more about what that looks like?
So for them, we have 2. We have 3 crew members. 2 of them are in high school. They happen to be brother and sister, actually, which was just coincidental.
Very cool.
But what we do is we do as many public engagement events as we can. So every weekend, usually we're out at 1, if not 2 different events. And they are there working with the crew, and they are also there as Ember. Although Ember's just Ember, of course. So, but they are there, so they wear the Ember costume. They are present in a lot of our public education stuff. When we're doing fuel treatments, they're there with us side by side doing fuel treatments. And we did, we kicked off this year. January 4th was a Monday, and I had scheduled a fuel treatment at one of the local parks that the SCRD Parks team had actually identified as a high risk.
Okay.
So we went into there and started a fuel treatment over the course of 2 days. And by hand, we removed, including with these high schoolers, we removed 21,000 pounds of material just over the course of a couple of days, just off the forest.
21,000 pounds.
Yeah.
That's incredible. I think that's a great use of, local assets. And I think it's amazing to involve the youth. And, I really feel, and what I see in the field is that when we involve the youth, they want to continue that work as they go about their lives. So, I commend you for that incredible initiative. That is really amazing. So,
and the thing for us too, is they get it. They are actually talking to their classmates and the other students in the schools as well. So they understand the concept, and they actually have their own group, their own community actually just got recognized this year as well.
That's amazing.
So,
and it almost helps make FireSmart look cool as well.
Yeah.
So, I think FireSmart's pretty cool, but we've got Ember and all the flashy items, but having a couple ambassadors within, a high school is, that's a really positive thing for the program. We know wildfire risk, it's not slowing down anytime soon. Looking ahead, how do you think communities need to evolve their FireSmart work to keep up?
Well, we take baby steps, right? As I said before, it's a baby step thing where we walk through these things. We're having people focus, we're having communities focus on the roof, on the eaves, on the gutters, and the immediate zone around. And they're not going to like it, but they are going to really have to start to let go of these cedar hedges. And we have more and more of these, but we're finding more and more that people, when they're doing retrofits or if they're doing redecoration or any of those sorts of things, they're actually thinking of it and looking at it through a FireSmart lens. And when we do our homeowner ignition assessments, we're very clear that when we do these, that we are doing a walk around with the homeowner. Because 2 reasons for that. Number one is it's an opportunity to educate from the ground up, literally and figuratively. But it also means that they don't get overwhelmed, and it leaves them, by the end of the assessment, they're already a couple of steps ahead because they can see some of the things that are going on. And I think the more we do those sorts of things, the more the communities will become aware. And you'll see more and more people looking at things through that lens and thinking twice before they do things.
Absolutely. I've heard FireSmart be related to the recycling program. And when I was a kid, the recycling program was, it was second nature to me. And, that's what I'm hearing the hopes for the FireSmart program are as well. So growing up, we knew paper needed to go into the blue recycle bin. And as our kids are now growing, we hope that they know, no combustible items up against the house. Let's caulk the gaps in the siding and really learning to live with wildfire.
If I may, when we were just starting to get the library program launched, and went in to talk to one of the women that's in charge of the kids library section, and walked in and said, we wanted to do this Ember comes, she doesn't tell stories, but there's storytelling, there's dances, there's Ember, we have a fire truck and everything else. And as I walked in, she stood up and said, "You're that guy." And I go, "What do you mean?" She goes, "You're that guy." And I said, sorry. She goes, you made a presentation at the local elementary school and my daughter came home and all she says now is, we've got to mow the grass. We got to move this from there and this can't be there. And she's all over me now. So it worked out very well, actually.
Absolutely. And, that's, I think that, when we talk to the youth, like I say, they're sponges and they just love to share what they learn. So thank you very much for sharing that story. For somebody just getting started in the FireSmart world as a FireSmart coordinator or a community leader, what's one piece of advice that you would give to them as they're starting out their FireSmart journey?
To be as involved as possible in the community. This isn't a place for somebody to be shy or introverted. This is a place to be out and talking to people. And I think, as I said before, we're very opportunistic feeders, myself and my team. So we are out. We always make ourselves available. We're always available for conversation. And I think that's one of the biggest things for somebody that's starting out. I think the other thing is to really know who your FireSmart BC team is and to lean on them, because they're an incredible resource. And there's a lot of information that's out there. And, we talked about the old website. You go down to the rabbit hole and you'd end up 3 days later, you'd come up and realize, wait a second, what was I looking for? But, you've got incredible resources at the fingertips. And the other thing too is find yourself a mentor. Who do you think should be a mentor? And I think that if, through the FireSmart BC team, they might be able to line you up with somebody, but find a mentor, somebody that's done this before. The challenge for a lot of people is we all live in a vacuum. And even though we're in this different area from everybody else, we all share the same common thread. And we all share the same passion. And I think you need to be able to get out and meet other people, or at the very least talk to other people.
Working in the FireSmart realm, we know it's not all sunshine and rainbows when it comes to community buy-in. What sort of challenges are you facing with the Sunshine Coast Regional District, for buy-in with your FireSmart program?
I'm going to take that question, if I may, and just say, so when you say the Sunshine Coast Regional District, we're not talking specifically about the political body of the Sunshine Coast Regional District.
That is correct.
What we're talking about is what we would say would be the SWIA. So the entire SWIA, up and down the SWIA, is the buy-in part that I think is a little bit of a challenge is sometimes managing personalities. And when I say managing personalities, stratas sometimes present a problem. And you will have a small group of people with the best of intent trying to get some things done, but there are always those people out there that are naysayers. And that's probably the biggest challenge I have. We're second year in, we're still on a growth trajectory. So I've got so much stuff to a certain degree that I'm still drinking from the fire hose to a certain degree, but there is lots of new things. And what I find is slowing down a little bit is maybe a bit of a challenge, because it seems like every opportunity creates 10 more opportunities. So that's one of the things, but I think it's the managing the personalities and managing the naysayers that are out there, but they're becoming fewer.
All right. Thank you very much for sharing that. Sometimes it can be difficult to share some of the challenges that we do experience, because often I do hear that, FireSmart coordinators, they bear a lot of this weight and they take it personal at home. And I was wondering if you'd be able to speak a little bit to that for maybe FireSmart coordinators out there that are struggling with community buy-in and, maybe aren't feeling up to their best, with the program. And if you had any advice for them.
Again, I think I would probably go back to that mentoring piece. If there was somebody there that you could lean on. I've been very fortunate in my tenure, because having come through the fire service, I already knew a bunch of the people in the community and had been for pretty much 2 or 3 years, had already been doing volunteer HIZ assessments. So for somebody who's new to this, I think we always talk about this mental wellness thing. I mean, it's taking care of yourself, taking the time to take care of yourself. And what I find is, there's so much that you can do within the FireSmart program. It doesn't all have to be done on the first weekend. So it's a matter of taking it and pacing yourself. And for us, for our team, what I say to them is, we're going to start with the homeowner ignition assessment. That's number one. And from there, we'll start to grow and blossom. So our usual trajectory is there's a public event. Public event generates HIZ assessments. We do the HIZ assessments. Through that process, you usually find who your neighborhood champion is, and you usually find some homes that could be prime candidates for the new wildfire mitigation program. So I think if you can take it and just follow that step, I don't think you need to rush out and try and make sure you get every single neighborhood recognized or get everybody to jump on the Home Partners program. And it's no disrespect to either of those, but sometimes we're trying to make small recommendations so that people can take baby steps. And if you go in with the wildfire mitigation program piece, sometimes it becomes just so daunting for people, especially when you're considering that you're looking at vulnerabilities that are a centimeter by a centimeter by a centimeter, and that can paralyze people. So take slow, easy steps, take time to yourself, and just be a duck. Just let it wash off. Don't worry about it. Don't let it rent space in your head.
Awesome. I really appreciate you answering that question. I think that's fantastic feedback for any FireSmart staff out there that is listening today. Take time for yourself. Be kind to yourself. As we close out today, David, I just wanted to say thank you very much for your time. Thank you for your dedication and everything that you do, not only in the Sunshine Coast Regional District, but for FireSmart and everybody across the province. I wanted to give the floor to you just for a couple moments if there was anything else that you'd like to share with our listeners today about what it takes to be FireSmart.
As far as taking the FireSmart process, again, I think I go back to the just one step at a time and celebrate your wins and build those bonds, build those relationships, because it really isn't a one and done, because there is a constant piece of this, but making yourself open, I think, is the key thing for everybody.
That's awesome. Thank you very much for that. So showing up, making yourself open, take time for yourself. You're going to have success with the program. As a very last question, David, where can people go to learn more or become more involved in FireSmart for the Sunshine Coast Regional District?
For the Sunshine Coast Regional District? For the Sunshine Coast Regional District, what they can do if they want, they can go to the SCRD website. They can go to the drop-down screen for services. In the drop-down screen for services will be FireSmart. When you tab onto FireSmart, will be the drop-down screen for everything that we have available for the local community, as well as an application for an assessment. And we've broken into things like the home ignition zone posters are out there. We've got the landscaping hub that's there. We've actually isolated the privacy hedging because, again, it's very relevant. And we've done there's a thing that came through the University of Waterloo, the 3 steps to wildfire maintenance.
You bet.
We've got that in there, and it's just little things like that. And then we also have a tab for a kids program. And what we did do, and here's one of the challenges we did face, and I should have mentioned this earlier, with our library program, there's all the games in the coloring book, right? But we didn't actually budget for the coloring book to be put in and dispersed whenever they needed.
Okay.
Nor do they want to service the kits. They have a thing called a STEAM kit. So in the STEAM kit for the library program is all the books. There is a fire truck. There's the Ember Stuffy and a couple of toys, and it's meant for family. But there was so much great stuff in the Ember coloring book that what we did was we actually isolated all those games onto a family program that sits on the SCRD website. So you can go down through that process, and through it all, you can actually then request a speaking session if you want, or things like that. But I thought those games and stuff were just so interesting, and that we just put it up on the ad. So it was a couple of things to put up on the website for ourselves.
Awesome. I really appreciate you sharing that. For FireSmart BC resources, you can get us on the FireSmart BC website. We'll link to that in the speaker notes today. But David, we're going to wrap up. I want to say thank you one more time for joining us here today on the Get FireSmart BC podcast.